Don't. Do not answer. Don't do it. Suddenly he grabbed the phone and pushed the accept button. Ethan himself didn't know how it happened. He just did it, that's all. The phone pressed tight against his ear. He waited for a hoarse, gurgling voice to call his name and tell him to look behind. Hello everyone, I'm Rainbow Rat. This is not what I was planning to record today, but I have a little bit of a cold, and the game I wanted to record today is, as far as I know, supposed to be long, because I just finished my Undertale playthrough, which was my long game going on. But I didn't want to start a long game while I'm sick. But if I sound a little stuffed up, that's why. So instead, we've got Selene Apoptosis. This game, I may have to upgrade my editing chops for this. I might get a little spicy, I'm not sure. Oh wait, no, I meant to hit no. Ah, fuck. Okay, anyway. Start. So let's just see. I look a mess. It's fine. The sound was driving him crazy. Monotonous, muffled thuds were resonating throughout his head with dull pain. Oh, interesting. The pain wasn't too strong, nothing unbearable. Hello, cat! Holy crap. Could you not? Thank you. Nothing unbearable, but that sound, more than anything else, he wanted the sound to just stop. Thud. Nevertheless, the knocking sounds didn't end. He knew it well enough, because he himself was their origin. Thud. 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 The nose of his slipper was hitting the rear of his desk over and over again, like a huge fluffy moth frantically ramming against the window glass. He wanted plenty of things. He wanted to pay the rent in time this month, not to displease his landlady again. He wanted to finish the script, at least in draft, because a draft is way better than nothing, something one can work with. And he wanted to sleep. No, not quite that. The problem, a serious one, was that he didn't really want to sleep. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his shut eyes, pressing his eyeballs until dancing pale lights appeared. Of course, he took the sleeping pills. When a healthy 8-hour sleep gives way to a not-so-healthy 5-hour nap, then a 3-hour eyes shut break, and then goes away entirely, you stop thinking about how this will impact your liver. You just want to sleep. You need to sleep, especially if you have already taken an advance payment for the first part of a gig, and the goddamn text won't just write itself. However, if the text could in fact write itself somehow, he would probably lose his job. He didn't have any illusions in this regard. As soon as neural networks got smart enough, he and dozens of other ghostwriters will vanish into the morning mist of a new era of literature. He didn't have much of a name or connections, only some skill and a knack to meet the deadlines for the most part. The client was content with this, and he was content with the pay, so everything went well until the pills started failing him. Blam. This time, the tic got too strong. His foot jerked and hit the board with a very noticeable pain. It seemed like even he heard his toes crack. It seems like he even heard his toes cracks. He muttered a short curse and rolled the chair away from the desk, although he knew now that his attention was not fixed on the blank text file. The tic should go away all by itself. It's funny how the consciousness is detached from the body. He often thought about it, especially while having insomnia. It feels like you're working as a team, but your partner starts pulling something. You seem to have common goals, but when all hell breaks loose, you are suddenly left alone with it, and your partner is more interested in watching the fire than fighting it. In the end, you have no idea what's on his mind. Well, at least there won't be any more knocking. Good. A small window at the far side of the room flashed white for a moment. A storm? Now that he thought about it, the day was hot. The viscous, stagnant air still filled the room. Hello? Hello? Oh, there's a stink bug on my wall. The cat is chasing the stink bug on my wall. Interesting. This and the barely audible squeak of an overheated network file, he became sensitive to such things when he couldn't sleep for a long time, made the entire room seem to vibrate a little, like a cocoon that's about to hatch. Actually, that did sound like a good line. He rolled back to the table and was about to write that thought down, but paused over the keyboard. He remembered the individual words and the general idea, but the sentence had already slipped away. This time, the white light seemed to fill the entire room. Then a thunder followed, resembling a low gut roar of something large and famished. Good Lord. He called to God way too often for someone who never goes to church. Just a habit he inherited from his mother. A furious patter of raindrops pounded on his window. There's no way he could work like this. Not now. But maybe it's for the best. Since he was a little boy, he slept well during the storms. Had to seize the moment. He groped for a packer of sleeping pills. It's nice to have your working tools at hand. Popped the pills into his mouth and opened the window to hear the steady patter of the rain. You're gonna catch a cold. Not that that's how I caught mine, but it's fine. Then he went to the bed and collapsed on top of the bed sheets, his clothes still on. He could tell by the sound that the water had flooded the windowsill and was trickling down to the floor. He decided that was a small price to pay. He felt a pleasant chill of cloth beneath his cheek. The wavering haze was gradually fading from the room, yet the sleep did not come. He tried to take off his shoes, change position, take a pillow, cover himself, throw the pillow away to the other side of the room. Nothing helped. He just laid there with his eyes closed, and through his closed eyes felt heavy, he knew it. And though his closed eyes felt heavy, he knew it was an illusion. All in vain. He's not sleeping. He can't sleep. Thud. At first he thought he was imagining things. Thud. 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 Sometimes the knocking paused, but it never stopped completely. The sound came from below, from the first floor. Someone was banging insistently on the door, and with each thud he could feel the rage building up like a tight knot of pain around his stomach. He is trying to sleep. Is it really that hard to just leave a man alone? At least at night, at least in the house that he pays for specifically so that nobody would bother him. He opened his eyes, easy, just as he thought. Sprang to his feet and ran down the stairs. Something was boiling inside him. Halfway to the door, he took a turn to the cupboard and pulled out an old baseball bat. He wasn't likely to actually use it. He asked himself if he would, as he reached for the door handle. No, he certainly wouldn't, but he's angry and he wants the night guest to learn it. What the hell? The rain was still pouring, or rather, it was actually getting stronger. As his mother would say, and the floodgates of heaven tore open. His mother used to say a lot of things. That was on the list of reasons why he had to rent this overpriced house where anyone could start banging on the door in the middle of the night. A cat, for example. I didn't realize this would be so reading heavy. I'm sorry if my voice sucks for this. What the hell? He said it again, this time, aloud. It's a cat girl. Cat girls are ruining my life. A cat was standing on his porch. She looked like a purebred British Shorthair in all respects, except for the color. Aside from the smoky gray head, it seemed as if she was dropped into a vat of white paint, while her lower part was dipped into a black one. But this isn't a... They're describing an actual cat, but this picture is not that of a cat. Wet fur clung to her small, rather skinny body, dripping with water. The cat could have probably slipped into the house as soon as the door opened, but instead she froze, as if waiting for the host to say something. Can I save? Save. 1. Return. I feel like refusing is just gonna end the game. Raining cats and dogs. It was cold outside, and much colder than one might think. He didn't feel angry anymore. Alright, come in. He stepped aside, freeing the doorway. The cat didn't move, so you don't want to, huh? He was about to say fine then, and close the door, go back to the second floor, and lie in a suffocating half-sleep until morning. But he finally realized what was wrong. The bat. He threw it away, aiming for the sofa, but missed. The bat clattered onto the floorboards. Don't zoom in. The cat followed it into the darkness with her brown yellow eyes. The sounds didn't frighten her. He sighed. I won't hurt you. Come in if you want. The cat raised her eyes at him. For the first time, he actually saw, and couldn't help admiring, how big and yellow they were. The cat's pupils were also large and incredibly round, like 2 full moons in an eclipse. Just as he was about to close the door for the second time, the cat murmured something and fluttered into the house, butting him with her wet head as she passed by. He smiled. Strictly speaking, at this very moment, his line had ended. If the landlady found out, and he was sure she would, he'd have to look for a new place to live. There are plenty of lonely, bored seniors in the neighborhood, he thought, and they only have two hobbies, observing and reporting. The subject and the recipient aren't that important. Well, it's fine. Maybe he'd leave the suburbs. Maybe he'd move to an apartment, since him getting privacy didn't work out anyway. The rain was getting stronger still. He closed the door. That wasn't a cat. The cat explored the house with cautious curiosity, stopping by different objects as if trying to understand their purpose. Watching that was amusing, so amusing he even forgot about the stain. When he remembered, it had already spread out, a dark spot of water in the place where the cat clung to him. He pulled the wet cloth away from his body and stared at it blankly for a moment, and then almost groaned aloud. The cat was soaked, so she was probably got a lot of dirt in the house. He decided not to turn on the light. He had enough disappointment for the night. Instead, he went to get a towel. "All right, come here." The cat turned her head to the voice and froze in place. She was examining the TV, a lifeless black mirror of a lifeless black mirror of a plasma panel and lacquer frame that he hadn't even touched since moving in. In the reflection, the cat herself looked about black. She gave him a long, appraising look, and then, with a sudden eagerness, trotted towards him, deftly avoiding the obstacles. He was surprised. Maybe the cat decided he was more interesting than the TV, or maybe she acted out of respect for her host's will. Anyway, he felt grateful. Finally, someone he can actually negotiate with. Suddenly, he thought how nice it would be to crawl under the blanket with a warm ball of fur. It would surely have helped him to fall asleep. As a child, he had a cat. Gray, huge, brash, immensely ugly, and equally beloved. He often fell asleep hugging him. The cat's name was Tilo, and he faded into a June night many years ago. The cat bumped her wet head against him once more. He thought that cats usually shake off the water themselves. Usually, but perhaps not always. "Hey, easy there. You're all wet." The cat looked up at him with her moon-shaped eyes and murmured something again. "Do something about it, then." He smiled and got to work. He had to squeeze the fur thoroughly so that the towel soon turned into a wet rag. Should he? I'm gonna have to get my editing chops out. The cat should be bathed, because if you don't, then it's gonna get dirty rainwater in its bed. But I'm concerned about what it is going to put in my face if I do that. That won't do. I'll give you a bath. He carried her to the bathroom. The cat stayed still in his arms, a warm and incredibly light body pressed against his chest. He was expecting the cat to bring out the claws any moment, maybe as he opens the door. Now, or as he turns the light on. Maybe this time? But nothing happened. The cat glanced around the new room and looked at him again with her intelligent, almost human-like gaze. Not a single muscle in her small body moved. She was curious, and that's about it. She trusts me. He was about to ask her if she knows where they were and what was going to happen next, but that was just too much. So, it shouldn't be very difficult. The two of us can manage this. What do you think? You read somewhere a cat should get used to the new surroundings before bathing. Fear is born out of the unknown, and in that regard, people haven't gone too far from cats. New scents, unfamiliar objects, and the splashing of water. These are just shadows under the bed that will fall back if you get a better look at them. He carefully put the cat on the floor. She looked around the room again and returned her questioning eyes to him. It seemed like she got comfortable enough. He turned on the water in the shower and felt a gentle touch. The cat was already loitering around his feet. She was curious indeed. The shower isn't so bad compared to the rain, is it? The joke came out a little awkward. He felt embarrassed, and he didn't know why. You should... Okay, this is fine. You should... I don't know if YouTube's gonna like this. You shouldn't bathe a cat in the shower. If anything, you should do a sink, or, like, maybe the bathtub if it's a big cat, but, like, not with a lot of water in it. You really... Okay, can I... She's just a cat. Maybe it was because of how the water glistened on her skin. Cat. Or as she was looking at him from under half-lowered lashes, she was actually watching. He met her eyes, and each time felt shame burn through him, but that shame was thick and sweet. He was a little dizzy. His hands slid over her smooth, wet skin, and each time he would ask himself, was it really necessary? Then he would feel her eyes on him, and his thoughts would meld, running down her thighs with the lather, disappearing between her neat toes. Don't talk about her toes. Cats don't have toes. The bathroom shimmered, molten bright, pulsating with light, or darkness. He felt like he was losing his balance, and pulled his hand away, but she returned and pressed it to the wet, hot skin covered in a soapy veil. She guided it. I don't think this game is what I thought it was. Cat person. He couldn't remember how he'd ended up in the living room again. The cat was napping peacefully in his arms. He absently ran his fingers down the cat's wet back, tracing the bumps of her spine with his fingers. I should get you some food. Let me see what I have. He got up, with just a tad bit difficulty, nothing he couldn't handle. Still, his body felt unusually heavy and unwieldy. He had to give the cat something to eat. He will lie down afterwards, and then, hell, maybe he'll even fall asleep. Maybe he should have gotten a cat from much earlier, a ball of fur with a pair of moon eyes and a velvety voice that you can always negotiate with. And that's about it. That's kind of funny. He could have avoided all that suffering if only he had a cat. I don't think so. I mean, I love my cats, but... The kitchen blurred before his eyes. He got to the refrigerator and opened it, squinting from the light and leaning on the door way harder than he was supposed to. If the landlady was around at the time, she would have told him exactly so. Don't lean on the door. After all, this was her house and her refrigerator, and everything should be neat and tidy in case she has to move new tenants in. Perhaps the landlady would have even warned him about the milk. The milk itself is completely harmless, unless, of course, you're allergic to lactose. But there is a special kind of lactose-free milk, right? What matters is the bottle. Bottles, much like cats, can vary greatly, but this particular one was made of glass. If only the landlady was here, she would probably have told him not to touch the bottle, because he's falling on the floor and the bottle might break, and then the milk will spill, and he will have nothing to feed the nice cat he found. Or rather, it was her who found him, and very timely, because he was lying on the floor. He had been lying there for some time, and would have been lying still if he hadn't felt the light touch of something hot and rough on his cheek. It was almost like a dream, although, of course, comparing sleep with fainting isn't quite correct, no matter how you look at it. The floor beneath him was surprisingly hard, cold, and wet. He felt all those three qualities clearly, and was afraid to imagine what would happen if he tried to move. But he had to move one way or another, at least to see what's up, because something hot and rough was still sliding up his cheek, gradually creeping up to his ear. He felt a warm breath and then a cautious bite. Ouch. He jumped on the spot. A shadow rushed to the side, and then calmly began to lap milk from a puddle. We're blurring that. That is ass. What have I gotten myself into? It's like, the cat. What are you doing? The cat looked at him briefly and licked her lips. No need to be this dramatic. You were lying around idly and you're not even a cat, see? Besides, you're soaked in milk. Well, you're right. I let you down and had to get my punishment. I let myself down too. Good lord, now there's cleaning to do until the next advent, like his mother would have said. I'll go get a rag. Stay here and don't ruin what's left of the kitchen while I'm gone. The cat watched him go with a skeptical look. It's like, a few months ago when it was... Aren't you the one who's been causing all the trouble so far? It's like, a few months ago, I think there was that issue where... was it... something? Corey Extension or something, had his video of the mortuary assistant get demonetized or whatever, and then like Markiplier and Jacksepticeye were like, or I think it was Markiplier had uploaded a very heavily censored video of him just playing a porn game and seeing if he could get it uploaded and monetized. That was funny. When he returned with the bucket, the cat was gone. I'm very late on that trend, but, you know, that's fine. I'm not monetized yet anyway. The Theater of presents how to bake. What? In the kitchen, something exciting was happening. Take. You'll need a blade. Oh yeah, by the way, this is a horror game. Did you take the pills? Scratch out the entrails. The Egyptians widely used honey for embalming and preserving food. Later, the recipes were adopted by the Greeks. Also add a teaspoon of apricot jam, a walnut, and a little cinnamon. Before baking, put a teaspoon of butter on top of... Microwave for 5 to 7 minutes at full power. Holy fuck. Don't listen to them scream. Bon appetit! What the The next time he saw her was in a few days, or maybe in a week. He always had a bad sense of time, especially when he was immersed in his work. He still couldn't sleep, but at least he was making some progress with the script. It was a narrative game project, as the customer called it, but actually meant do whatever you have to finish it on time, else forget about the payment. And so he did, although he was resentful and that got in the way a lot. The reason of those feelings was the cat. He knew how stupid that was, but he couldn't help it. He forgave her for the bite almost immediately. That wasn't the thing. He was bitter about how the cat ran away, despite him trying his best to take care of her. She was nowhere to be found in the house, so he immediately thought about an open window on the second floor. Maybe he should have closed it. He dwelled on the thought for a while. He even approached the window at some point, but in the end, he decided not to do anything about it. He was hoping, and there was no shame in that. It's not the same as you turn up 10 and start eyeing girls. The cat would come back. And she did. He had just settled himself on a sofa with some book. Some was the word, as he couldn't remember a thing from the cover, even though he read the title several times. The symbols were floating before his eyes, and of course he couldn't even make out a word. No wonder, considering he didn't sleep at all. When you think about it, it was surprising he could write in this state. Either way, he was barely following the book, so he wasn't upset at all when a fluffy head butted his hand. Hey, I'm trying to read here. And you don't seem to be getting anywhere. What does it matter anyways? Better scratch me right here. He complied. You were absent for so long. I thought you won't be back. Then why didn't you close the window upstairs? There's a big difference between expectations and hopes. He had learned that well. Why did you leave? Did I do anything wrong? The cat stayed silent. We're gonna go with happiness. Alright, it doesn't matter that much. I'm happy to have you back. After all, there was no point in his grudge from the start. Nobody gains anything by holding on to small grudges and staying blind to what they really feel. You won't have won anything. It's not a damn lottery. The cat rubbed against his arm again. He put the book down and gently placed her on his lap. The locket around her neck, unexpectedly cold, touched his skin. Then he got a hunch. Did you go home? I have no home. Well, someone must be caring about you if they put that collar on. Sometimes a collar is just a collar. Don't you know? This time it was him who stayed silent. The cat buried her head in his stomach. Want me to take it off? No. It is mine now. Besides, it's weight. It's easier this way if I catch someone's eye on the streets. He nodded, because if you think about it, that was a really reasonable choice. The cat's fur was thick and smooth, very pleasant to the touch. He wanted to bury his face in it, find out what it smelled like. What she smells like. Do you have a name? Of course. Everything has a name. And what's yours? The cat looked at him carefully with her bright yellow eyes, as if saying, take a guess. But she didn't actually say anything. On her locket, there was a small engraving, a crescent moon that was dimly shining in the pale light coming from the window. Selene. The cat looked at him, looked up at him, and her pupils flickered into 2 full moons in an eclipse. Then she rubbed against his arm one last time, stood up, stretching, arching her back. Don't close the window on the 2nd floor. I won't. She left, but the name stayed with him in and around the house. Selene. So hummed the glass, white in the moonlight. So whispered the long shadows of the branches outside the house. Let's focus on the name. What is Selene? For some reason, the question bothered him. He vaguely remembered it had something to do with mythology. Such things never really caught his interest, but fortunately, he knew someone he could turn to. Meanie. You know I can't stand them. And you know it's me who'll have to take care of it after all. You're basically living in the office. Ethan never liked cats, and the dogs too. Not much of a difference. He didn't like the very idea of keeping a predator at home, even a small one. Couldn't explain why. Hope sighed. She closed the tab with the Cattery's website, then slapped her husband lightly on the shoulder. Even so, the faces of the Persian cats, deeply depressed and equally concave, still lingered before his mind's eye. Ethan held up his hands in a conciliatory gesture. He knew it wasn't over yet. Hope is not the one to give in this easy. She never was, and for him there was something incredibly appealing about it. Come to think of it, quite possible it'll be him who capitulates in the end. In a relationship, you always have to sacrifice something. In 4.5 years, or even 5 according to Hope, he had learned this quite well. Suddenly, Hope frowned, looking at the screen. Seems like you got an email from, damn, a tough one. I can't quite read it. It just hit your work mailbox. Let me see. I hope I got a new project. The Middle Ages are fine and all, but they're about to start pouring out of my ears. Ethan reached for his laptop, but Hope grabbed it and dodged him. Right. Why don't we talk about contracts on a Sunday evening? So which one of us is all work and no play, Well, such are the benefits of freelance. Come on, give it back. Hope giggled and leaned over the armrest, hanging over the floor. Hope's defenses withstood several more attacks, each time Ethan thought the laptop would definitely hit the floor. Then she gave Ethan a peck on the cheek and slid off the couch. The laptop returned to its owner. All right, I give up. I mean, what if they'll actually give you a new contract, but on the same old Middle Ages? Now, that would be a twist. Yeah, hilarious one. But there was nothing about the Middle Ages in the letter. Not a mention of the payment, too. Ethan read it several times. Leaving the formalities aside, there was but one question in the letter. Ethan, or rather the part of him that was responsible for finding the accurate answers, got immediately engaged by the wording. What is Selene? Ethan rolled that question around in his mouth as if tasting it. At a glance, the answer was simple. Ethan's real passion was the early Renaissance, but he was a history consultant after all. At least he liked to think of himself that way. The agency was paying him for a reason. He needed no research to tell that Selene was the goddess of the moon in the ancient Greece. Couldn't the main dude just have looked that up? Like, Google exists, my buddy. The question, however, seemed to be way more intricate in its nature. Or at least that's what Ethan wanted to think, because the Middle Ages were actually starting to pour out of his ears. Or were actually about to start pouring out of his ears. He was always diving into his work completely, and living in an age where madness, curse, and death are contagious in an exhausting trial. He needed some distraction. Of course, he had a part-time job with those online courses, but the platform where he lectured wasn't planning on anything new just yet. All in all, the request looked interesting, if not for one small matter, the payment, or rather, the lack thereof. Ethan hesitated. The sender's name seemed familiar. He searched the email address and found out they had already worked together on a couple of texts. Both times, his efforts were duly paid for by the agency. Ethan never worked for free. It wasn't his principle, but rather a matter of necessity. The problem here was the fact that Ethan loved what he was doing too much, and if you were trying to make money from what you love, that's a slippery slope. But free service there and unpaid consultation here, and then you go back to splitting the sheet protectors 8 hours a day, watching your dreams rust away. Besides, Ethan didn't want to let Hope down. Of course, she supported him when he decided to go freelance, but Ethan never wanted to take advantage of that. No, that won't do. He works only under contract and does not give free consultations. Just as he's about to give that as a response, Hope's fair head pops from behind the door. Are you coming? On the walk, Hope brought up the cat thing a few more times. Ethan protested absently. His thoughts went back to the letter again and again. To that question. The more he thought about it, the more he wanted to find the answer. It was no longer a matter of helping an acquaintance whose name Ethan immediately forgot. No, it was Ethan himself who needed a little help with distraction and an answer. That was a weird thing to do, but Ethan waited until Hope was fast asleep. Only then did he sneak over to his laptop and write a response. Certainly he had no real answer as of yet. He threw in a few dozen polite words, the general meaning of which was he had taken up the case. Then he clicked send. When Ethan returned to bed, Hope was still breathing slow and deep. He listened to her breathe for a while, trying not to think that he had broken his own rule. After all, he really needed a distraction. No matter the strength of your affection, sooner or later you will want to take a break. There was another thing he had learned over the past 4.5 years. Oh no. Not marital issues. I don't even know if they're married, I don't know. If Ethan had to point out when things started to be off, he would say it was on Saturday. That is, about a week after the first letter. But this, of course, wouldn't be accurate. This weird thing started happening almost immediately after he pressed the send button. The first night, he saw a room in his dreams. What am I getting myself into? A chipped white ceiling and similarly rough walls lit with fluorescent lamps. Ethan couldn't see the lamps themselves, but he recognized the cold, shimmering light. They often used those lamps in offices. The light filled the room to the brim. Ethan thought it was about to burst, and then the light would splash all over the room just like the juice from a squished tomato. That is a thick couch. Apart from the walls and the light, the room had a red sofa. The sofa stood just a bit aside from the center, not too large, quite faded, flooded with shimmering white light. This light made the sofa seem to be trembling a little, and the room trembled with it. Suddenly, Ethan thought it would be way better if the sofa was standing right in the middle. Then he felt something on his temple, a touch. He had to flinch, scream, stumble to the side, yet he couldn't. He was paralyzed. Only his eyes could move, and they desperately tried to reach beyond his field of vision, or something was touching his temple. Ethan felt a faint flow of air as if someone was whispering in his ear. He did hear the whisper, just one word. Ethan no longer remembered what the word was when he jumped in his bed, gasping for air. Hope muttered something in her sleep and turned to the other side. It took a long time to get back to sleep, but by morning Ethan did pass out, and when he woke up, the dream wiped out of his mind pretty quick. The task at hand interested him much more than some muck spilling out of his subconscious. He was thinking about the task while he was chewing on the morning toast, driving to the bank, and all the way back. It was just like a Christmas present waiting for its time in the closet. The more you tell yourself you shouldn't think about it, the more you do. At home, Ethan tried to stick to his plan, working on the project he was paid for, but ended up sitting over a single report for several hours. He couldn't squeeze out a letter. To hell with it. After all, he was almost done with his current project. It wouldn't be much of a problem if he presented the result a bit later on, would it? Besides, it really was time for him to get a breather. One can't be spending so much time in a world where madness, curse, and death are contagious. To hell with it, Ethan thought as he closed the files of the project he was paid for. There was plenty of information, but Ethan knew he would not get an answer right away. The accurate answers, just like the precious pearls, lay at the great depths. He had to get down to the very bottom. Ethan was not afraid. He had done it many times. His counterpart might have to wait for a week or so, but Ethan knew he'll manage to crack the riddle. What he didn't know was what else could be found at those great depths, and at some point in the investigation, things started happening. He started hearing sparse phrases, even though he never turned on TV or radio, and Hope wasn't even at home. When he sat in front of the screen, once again trying to connect the dots in his research, he could feel someone looking at the back of his head. When he turned around, of course, there was no one in the room. Eventually, he taught himself not to turn around. He just got angry, pushing his fingers into his temples when the familiar feeling appeared again. He started losing things, or rather, things would disappear and then appear in the strangest of places. One day he found his pencil in the freezer, stuck in a minced meat briquette. Even when the briquette wasn't melted down, he couldn't pull the whole pencil out. All Ethan got at was a bloody stump. Why is that painting legs? At some point he could stop and think about it. At this point he could stop and think of it, but got distracted by the coffee maker and mindlessly shoved the stump into the trash bin. There was something wrong with the shadows, too. They became sharper, thicker, deeper, and it was the case in the whole apartment. Sometimes they moved. Of course, Ethan only felt like they were moving. It couldn't have been any other way. Ethan didn't really pay attention to any of this, just like he did with that dream he had. All of that seemed very familiar, as he already experienced similar things during periods of intense work, when his nervous system was exhausted by the workload. There was always a rational explanation: the stress, or those new, much more environmentally friendly light bulbs that Hope had installed all around the apartment. Besides, it's so easy to dismiss this sort of things when you're deeply interested in something, and this question really got Ethan involved. Every time he seemed to get it right, his thought went off. Like he was climbing a rock, but the safe ledge suddenly turned slippery, and the next thing he knew, he's at the bottom again. He never faced anything like that during his previous research. There were times he had to spend weeks or months looking for the right answers. Those were the tricky cases, but at least he could always tell how his research is progressing. This time he was stumbling in his tracks without knowing why, and that was all he could tell. The week was over, but he still had nothing to send back to his contact. In his reply, Ethan asked a couple of questions, not that he was really interested, just as a courtesy. That's how the surprisingly exciting email conversation started. With this, Ethan's contact grew to be something more, something of a friend, maybe. He never asked how Ethan's work was progressing. This was the question Ethan asked himself, and the answer was never good for him. Of course, he started sleeping badly. Falling asleep was easy, but he woke up many times during the night, sometimes in a cold sweat. Ethan could not remember his dreams. That night, he woke up around about 3 or 4 times. At first, Ethan was lucky enough to fall asleep almost immediately after he woke up. But at some point, his eyes got open again. This time, the sleep wouldn't come. Ethan felt terribly thirsty. He found no slippers on the usual spot. The noise could wake up Hope, so he decided not to look for them and only regretted it when approaching the kitchen. The floor was bloody cold. So cold that Ethan unconsciously looked down. Oh! Cover your eyes! I can't skip it. And when he was looking up again, he saw a shadow. No doubt that shadow belonged to a woman, a naked woman. Ethan could clearly see the plates of her as the shadow turned around. No wonder it's freezing cold in here. The shadow moved slowly along the wall, floating in a rectangular pool filled with moonlight. She was dancing. She was dancing, and the humming silence in Ethan's ears was her music. Ethan was watching her, unable to move. He was paralyzed, just like back then in his dream, but he did not remember it. At that moment, he didn't remember anything at all, couldn't think about anything at all. What is this? He felt an itch in his eyes and the momentary urge to blink. For a fraction of a second, he could see only the thick, viscous darkness, and then when he opened his eyes again, there was no shadow anymore. The glowing rectangle shifted its place and now lay on the kitchen floor, at Ethan's feet. He could see the cold white light flowing into the seams between the tiles on the floor. For some reason, he took a deep breath and then stepped forward into the rectangle of light. Nothing happened. And what was supposed to happen? What did he really see? Did he really see anything? He walked deeper into the room, much bolder, grabbed the decanter, and started to drink in big, greedy sips. Water streamed down his chin and chest, hitting the tiles on the floor, and poured into the grooves of the seams. No, that wasn't a delusion. The kitchen was completely empty and the floor felt warm again. And yet, it wasn't a delusion. And all of this was begging for a rational explanation. That's why Ethan decided he should talk to Hope in the morning. something. Wait. What's this? Devil is made of clay and tomato soup, just like any human being. Interview with the devil. It's getting late and then I come. She deserves tomato soup. She used to serve other things, but not anymore. I'm the tomato soup. They both eat tomato soup. That's how I get in. What? What did I do? How do I get back? Okay. What's this? September 15th, the bus driver saw me. He didn't laugh at me and didn't get mad like Mom. He even allowed me to play in the bus. I wish there were more people like him. June 11th, I had a really weird dream today. Hope is okay. I'll go and look for him. I should have closed the darn window. Did you give anyone the apartment keys? By chance? What? Hope froze with the cup at her lips and blinked several times. Maybe you've let someone in? I didn't know. What's with those questions? I feel like someone is visiting our place. What do you mean? Exactly what I said. It's been a while since I started noticing random things vanish, and yesterday Hope frowned. She looked at Ethan as if a toad had just popped out of his mouth. Yesterday you... what? Let's say it bluntly. I saw someone in our kitchen last night. Some girl. The deep line on Hope's forehead had disappeared. She leaned back in her chair and laughed, throwing her head back. Oof, what a show you put on. Okay, fine, I confess. I did steal your cupcake. I mean, what am I supposed to do? I barely see you lately, so sweet pastries are my best shot to get some fun at night. Damn, I didn't realize you still remember that cupcake even existed. It was lying around in the fridge for what, 3 days? Hope glanced at Ethan, expecting him to start laughing too, yet he still looked very serious. She noticed for the first time that the whites of his eyes were pinkish and full of broken capillaries. Her smile slowly faded. Come on, maybe you left the keys unattended somewhere? I always leave my keys when I'm in the office, but I'm pretty sure there are no cat burglars among my colleagues. Come to think of it, we should have hired a bunch. That'd balance the risks of going broke we have on a monthly basis. You're sure none of your colleagues would play a joke on us? A joke? Good God, Ethan, you're looking like you're about to eat me alive. Take a bun instead. It tastes better, trust me. Hope pulled a chair closer to Ethan and took his hand. Please, hon, promise me you'll take a break after that project of yours is finished. I mean, one psycho is enough for our family. You promise? Ethan suddenly felt like a total idiot. A tired total idiot. A naked girl in their kitchen? Yeah, sure. He probably overworked to the point that he started being delirious at times. Maybe even walked in his sleep. He squeezed Hope's fingers lightly. I promise. Sorry, I'm a moron. I'm probably seeing the difference between a dream and reality. Or I probably stopped seeing the difference between dream and reality. Why don't you call Laura? No, a shrink is the last thing I need right now. My bad, sure, but that'd just be too cruel. What I need is to finish that project. After that, all the gears in my head will fall into place. I give you my word. Don't be like that. I mean, there's no need to start a full-fledged therapy anyway. Sometimes talking through your worries with a professional is all it takes to feel better. At least I shouldn't have pressed you on it. I get that you have enough problems of your own right now. How's it going in your new position? Hope rested her head on his shoulder and shrugged. Not fired yet, apparently. Seriously, though, I haven't figured it out yet. Those new responsibilities are exciting, but I always feel like I'm 10 times slower than I should be. I should probably get ready for a nice fat piece of overtime by the end of this month. Ethan kissed her forehead, closed his eyes, and squeezed the bridge of his nose. Well, I'm not ahead of the department as of yet, but I seem to have the same stuff on my plate. Just how do you manage not to pester me with stupid questions? Well, I eat cupcakes at night. You should give it a try. Hope poked Ethan's cheek a couple of times with her finger. Anyway, don't worry. I didn't give keys to anyone, and the only cat anything I've let inside was an actual stray cat. Not the stray cat. Now that I think of it, it's been ages since we had any company. Maybe we should. A cat? What cat? Hope sighed and pulled away. Please don't get all worked up, okay? At least I'm being open with you. Don't worry, she didn't wander around. Hope, we talked this over already. We talked over what? The fact that what I want doesn't really matter? Damn it, Hope, this is my apartment, and you're staying here alone now. Hope finished her tea in a couple gulps. I have to go to the office. She stopped at the door, not turning around. Sorry about the cat. She was really skinny, and I felt sorry for her. I also feel sorry for myself, Ethan, because I'm lonely. Really lonely. This time, Ethan felt like an angry idiot. He got up from the table and reached for Hope. Hope, I will start crying. It'll take time, and I don't have any to spare right now. See you tonight. See you tonight. He didn't know what else to say, so he followed Hope into the hall like a silent shadow. He thought the right words would come to him, but the entrance door closed, and he remained silent. Ethan sighed. He regretted his decision to talk about the night episode. He regretted how the talk turned out. He felt sorry for himself, and for Hope. After all, Ethan was well aware of that. He didn't really spend enough time with her. At first because of the agency project, now because of the question to which he still could not find an answer. It was time to end this. He's going to make some coffee, and then he'll open the laptop and write up some answer. It won't be an accurate one, but it's really time to finish that work marathon. After all, he doesn't even get paid for his time. Ethan nodded to the closed door and turned around, ready to execute the plan. That's when he saw her. Just for a split second, but damn it, he saw her! A black-haired girl flashed in the doorway of one of the rooms. Not even flashed, but drifted. Ethan's mouth went dry. Shadow. Of course, there was no one in the room. This had gone too far. Ethan had gone too far, but he couldn't turn back even though he was going to. He didn't even make any coffee. He wanted to get rid of that question, get a good night's sleep, and forget about the whole thing. Forget about the shadow that danced in his kitchen. Forget about the pale silhouette that wandered through his apartment. Forget that at this very moment someone is looking into the back of his head, and that look makes his skin feel as cold as the kitchen floor last night, and the hairs one by one stayed on end. I don't like this. Ethan clenched his teeth, not with anger, but with some new emotion he couldn't name. The blood hummed in his ears louder and louder. It'll all be over after he writes the letter. It will all be over. He opened his laptop. His hands were shaking a little and was putting his fingers over the keyboard when his cell phone rang. Ethan flinched. He stared blankly for a few seconds as the vibrating rectangle of glass and plastic crawled across the table. Don't. Do not answer. Don't do it. Suddenly he grabbed the phone and pushed the accept button. Ethan himself didn't know how it happened. He just did it, that's all. The phone pressed tight against his ear. He waited for a hoarse, gurgling voice to call his name and tell him to look behind. Or what is supposed to happen in cases like this? Ethan. Hope? Were you expecting someone else, you dolt? Okay, sorry, I'm super uneasy, and so I'm talking nonsense. Yeah, I'm uneasy too. And that was completely true. Look, am I distracting you right now? You are, and I'm very happy about that. Go on, please. That's great. Look, it didn't come off well at breakfast, alright? Yes. I'm sorry, I'm being awful. No, I'm sorry. Both of us have it hard right now, so let's try not to fight, okay? Great idea. Why don't we go out tonight? Say, for groceries. Counts as going out, if you ask me. I'll go crazy being cooped up like that. Oh, so that's what's driving me nuts. Should go out for more zucchini more often. So, what do you say? Okay, we're going to buy all the zucchini tonight. Hope laughed. Ethan suddenly realized that the blood wasn't buzzing in his ears, no one was looking at the back of his head, and if he turned around, he would only see Hope's socks that she'd left on the chair again. Hope. I love you. I love you too, very much. See you tonight. After finishing the call, he turned around. The socks were resting peacefully on the chair, which meant everything was okay. He went back to the mail, and only then noticed several new letters. 2 of them were from his counterpart. Ethan hesitated. He had already decided his course of action concerning the question, so there was no harm in taking a look. He won't feel any guilt. After all, he had already done far more than he should have. Of course, he's a lifesaver for those wanting to sell books mentioning historical accuracy, but having no intention to pay for it properly. And so what? He doesn't have to do a perfect job for free. Hell, he doesn't even have to work for free. That's what Ethan thought. Then he opened the 2 letters he got and changed his highly reasonable decision. His counterpart was asking how soon he would get an answer. So, this happened, after all. The tone was very polite and apologetic. He wasn't expecting anything, but rather he really, really needed help of someone someone competent. According to their emails, he wasn't doing very well. The poor man had been suffering from insomnia for an insane amount of time, and it seems that he, too, began imagining things. It was as if Ethan saw himself on the outside. He said they felt very sorry for his acquaintance. Of course, he had begun to feel sorry for him earlier, but now Ethan felt a sharp, bitter pity. He realized that if he helps his acquaintance, he will help himself, but if he steps back now, what is the value of a specialist who is afraid of a little challenge? As Hope once said, the career ladder is made of thorn. Of course, he no longer worked in an office, but professional growth requires twice as much effort if you're self-employed. And besides, Ethan had Hope. Hope, who never gives in so easily and forgets her socks on the chair. Hope, who loves him very much. Hope, who will go to the store with him tonight, because being cooped up like that can drive one crazy. This must be what is happening to his acquaintance right now. Ethan had to help him. Not because of money, but because he could, and because it was the right thing to do. They will both finish their projects, and then they will have a good rest. They might even go out for a glass of beer together. So Ethan thought, and got back to the question with a newfound strength. The pages of books did not rustle in the far corner of the room, the shadows weren't wandering in the corridor, and certainly no one looked at the back of his head until the evening. And in the evening, Hope came back. Hope looked up from her magazine and leaned over the armrest. You had a call from the agency. Ethan just got back from the shower. He froze in place, clutching the towel at his waist. Something cold stirred uncomfortably in his stomach. The project. He had completely forgotten about the agency project, and it had been more than 2 weeks. The deadline was very close. He started for the phone, but Hope just waved her hand lazily. Don't worry, I picked up. What did you tell them? I told them that you stopped eating, sleeping, and loving anything other than work, so they'll get their files all nice and shiny. Pretty accurate, huh? Yeah. Just don't pick up my phone again, okay? Hope shrugged. Sure. I mean, it was you who asked me to answer the calls in the first place. Yes, I know. When I just started working for them, it was important to let them see I'm always in touch. Now that I've passed the probation period, there's no point in piling this on you any longer. Thank you for covering for me. No problem. If you're getting a call and I'm not too lazy to go pick it up, I can keep watching your back. No, you really shouldn't. This project is complicated. I'd rather deal with it myself. Ethan sat rigid. He never considered himself a good liar, but Hope didn't seem to notice anything. She sighed, pretending to be upset, and rolled her eyes. Well, now, I guess I'm being fired from an unpaid secretary position without any honors or compensation. Capitalism sucks. Ethan leaned over, tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear, and looked into her eyes. His hand remained on Hope's cheek. Your help is very important to me. Hope's hand went over his. She closed her eyes. I know. I couldn't have done it without you. What else is new? They kissed. When Hope pulled away, she looked pleased, a sly smile on her lips. Are we still going to the store? I'm not sure. They reached for each other again, but the phone gave a shrill ring. After the phone call this morning, Ethan turned silent mode off. Oh well. My city needs me. Ethan briefly pressed his lips to her forehead. Hope sighed and slapped his ass. If God exists, he really wants us to buy some zucchini. I'll go and get dressed. The call was from the agency. They needed more details and dates. Ethan went out into the hallway and tried to make it sound as possible as he could. Yes, he understands that the deadline is very close. No, there was no serious hitches in the work. Yes, he was sending everything on time. When the call finally ended, Ethan's neck and face were flushed by this time. He was a lousy liar, after all. Ethan had to catch his breath. And with that, I need to take a break. We're gonna save. No! Stop! How do I go back? Fine. We missed one line. We're gonna save here in the 6th spot, and I'm gonna take a break. That is all that I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!